All right, all, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue our talk about proper nutrition for runners and endurance runners. So the three most important components are carbohydrates, sodium, and fluids. So today we're going to tackle carbohydrates and specifically how many you need to take in, and also what is the difference between glucose, fructose, maltodextrin, and how much of each do you actually need. So again, without further ado, we're going to get right into it and talk about carbs as the main source of fuel for the body while you're running during some sort of endurance activity, right? That's the gas you're putting in your gas tank, is carbs directly into the body. So the simpler the carb, the more efficient and more effective it is for your body. And so of course we're going to talk about simple sugars. And the first thing we need to talk about is a disclaimer that simple sugars are not bad for you while you're training or while you're racing. During prolonged exercise, simple sugars are used directly as fuel. You don't have to worry about them spiking your insulin or going right to your blood or causing any sort of inflammatory response. Normally during any day, we don't want to just sit there and consume vast amounts of simple sugars, right? Because we know that that's not going to nutritionally do anything for us. So in fact, it'll harm us. But during exercise, those simple sugars are used purely for fuel. They're going to go right to your muscles, right for fuel, and they're going to be used up. So the simpler the sugar, the better, because when you're exercising, most of your blood is going directly to your muscles that are working to supply them with oxygen, nutrients, red blood cells, whatever it might be. There's not that much extra fuel or blood left over to aid in digestion. Think about Thanksgiving dinner. After a nice big meal, do you want to go do anything, or do you want to just kind of sit there and veg out and get tired? That's because all your energy is going towards digesting. It takes energy to digest. It takes blood to digest. So you want all the available blood in your body to be efficient at fueling your muscles that are working. So during prolonged exercise, endurance running, training, or a race, you want to make sure that you're maximizing the efficiency of your cardiorespiratory system, allowing your blood to be efficient at supplying your muscles for energy, and then using only the amount necessary to help aid in digestion. So that's why you want simple sugars while you're training or racing. That's also why if you've ever taken in a lot at once or something, some sort of substance or whole food while trying to run, you may find that you get an upset stomach and you get gut distress. That's because it's just kind of sitting there and you don't have a whole lot of energy to help digest it, and you're just going to go into a lot of distress and have GI issues. So, that's a long and short of how carbs work and why we need them. So that's the why. Now we need to get into, the what and the how. And so the what is basically how much you can take up to 90 to 120 grams of carbohydrates during exercise. Okay, so seems like a lot, but yes, if you have simple sugars, you can take in 90 to 120 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And that's what we care about. We don't care about calories per hour. We care about grams of carbs per hour. Okay, that's just what the recent science and research and literature has shown that the body can tolerate during exercise. Now, of course, you need good hydration and good salt to also let your body and gut tolerate that, because in high concentrations all at once, or if you have a lot of them over a long period of time without enough fluid to help increase blood volume to help digest, you're going to have issues. But 90 to 120 grams per hour is what you can tolerate. Now let's talk about what. So what type of sugar should you take in? This is where we get into glucose, fructose, and maltodextrin. Glucose and fructose are just two of the most simple sugars your body can digest during exercise. The simpler the better, easier to digest, boom, done, love it. Super simple. Maltodextrin is just a bunch of glucose molecules. All right. By definition, it's three or more strung together. You get maltodextrin. So I'm only talking about those because that's what you're going to see on the labels of your powder for drinks or your goos or your chews or honey stingers or whatever it might be. You're going to see those three things very commonly put on the labels. And so you want to know what you're actually getting in. So glucose and fructose are a little different. And by themselves, you can only tolerate X amount. So you can only tolerate this much glucose per hour by itself. You can only tolerate this much fructose by itself per hour, and it's a little less than glucose because fructose is very hard on the GI system. But for some reason, when you combine them together and ingest them at once, in an ideal 1-to-1 ratio, our friend Dr. Alex from Alacrity Endurance actually helped us with this, so we had a great video with him. When you combine glucose and fructose in a 1-to-1 ratio, you can actually tolerate a lot more per hour, all right? So again, let's back that up. You can only tolerate about 60, 70 grams of glucose per hour by itself, only about maybe 35 to 40 grams of fructose per hour by itself. But when you combine them together, you can tolerate a lot more total. That's where you get your ideal 90 to 120 grams of carbs per hour. So in an ideal world, your nutrition should be simple sugars, and those simple sugars should be a combination of the two most available and effective simple sugars for us during training, glucose and fructose, in a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, don't worry about the ratio because you're not going to be mixing them by yourself like Bill Nye the Science Guy or Justin and I at home experimenting on the weekends. Most of the products out there, if you look at the label, you'll see if it has a combination of glucose and fructose in it. Some of them may even specify. We do a lot of endurance racing with the Ironman brand, and there's Gatorade Endurance is a specific combination of glucose and fructose, as is Morton. So there are a lot of products out there that specifically combine glucose and fructose to allow your body to tolerate more so you can take more in. So, that's the last part of it to kind of help round out the carbs per hour and grams of carbs per hour and the what, the why, and the how. You really need to be focusing on taking in grams of carbs per hour only. Don't worry about calories. How many? You can take in 90 to 120 grams of carbs per hour while running. And you need that to be some combination of glucose and fructose, the two simple sugars that you'll see on most any nutrition package for endurance athletes. So, those are the key points to really take away from nutrition for runners. And like I said, you're going to need some additional fluid and sodium to help aid in your body handling that amount of carbs per hour. And you also want to make sure you're spreading it out over an hour. You don't want to take it all in at once. You don't want to be like, oh, I've been running for half an hour, 45 minutes already. Now I got to put in a lot because I lost time. That's not going to go well at all. So you're going to need to spread that out so your gut can easily digest it and you don't cause yourself more GI distress. So yes, even though you can tolerate 90 to 120 per hour, it really needs to be spread out over a longer period of time. You don't want to just hyper concentrate and take it all at once because you're going to find yourself behind the 8-ball, and that's going to be kind of tough to digest that. So those are the really important key facts here, and we'll talk more about sodium and fluid intake at a later date. But really wanted to talk about grams of carbs per hour in its own video, and why it matters, and how many runners out there don't take in enough carbs. How many runners out there say, oh, this doesn't agree with my stomach, that doesn't agree with my stomach. It might just be because you're taking in too much at once. It's hyper concentrated, or you're not taking it with enough fluids and salt at the same time. So these kind of things really matter. So get to understand your glucose and fructose. Try messing around with how many grams of carbs per hour your body can tolerate and your stomach can tolerate during training and racing. Definitely do some test runs with a product that you like or you want to try. Everybody's a little different. You're going to find what works for you, but the lion's share of individuals can tolerate 90 grams of carbs per hour easily, as long as it's done correctly, spread out over a long period of time. Not just all at once, with enough fluid at the same time. And not starting behind 8-ball. So don't wait till an hour into an hour plus training, activity or race to start fueling. You want to make sure you start front loading that early on. So have a good plan. But that's it, guys. Glucose, fructose, two simple sugars, of which you need a lot of for training. You can handle it for training and racing. Maltodextrin is just a lot of glucose strung together, and you can tolerate a lot more of it when combined. So that's really it. Carbs, it really matters. Carbs are king. Don't worry about calories, guys. Just find carbs. The simpler, the better, and find what works for you. And we love to hear from you. So let us know your thoughts. Let us know what works for you. Lots of products out there. Seems like every week we're finding a new one. So, throw some comments up. Let us know some suggestions. And that's pretty much it. Happy training.